Hi, and welcome to the Outquisitions podcast, where we spotlight industry leaders redefining success. The goal of each episode of the podcast is to uncover their stories, their strategies, and insights to inspire, inform, and really elevate your own journey. So let's dive into today's conversation with yet another super inspiring guest. If you want to listen to a really interesting talk, then stay tuned.
So Kendra, thanks for joining the podcast. It's a pleasure to have you today. Please introduce yourself, what you're doing, and how you came up in that position with your current company.
Yes, so thank you so much for having me. My name is Kendra Johnson. I am the founder of the Venned Group and soft skill expert here in Toronto, Canada, and expanding beyond into North America and Europe as well. I've had the Venned Group for coming on 7 years now, and it was really founded on the opportunity to develop mid-level leadership, not in their technical skills, but in the soft skills that are really the drivers and make our hard skills more effective every single day. So we do this through training and development, specifically bespoke workshops, some of our tailored programs and hallmark programs that we work with teams on an ongoing basis for. We have in-person events where we get leaders to come together and to connect, to really share experiences so that, especially in that mid-level leadership group, they know that they're not alone in some of the struggles that they have, and they can also share their successes with their peers. So it's a really rewarding industry and role and position, and 7 years has gone by like this, so I look forward to the next 7 years.
Yeah, interesting. And so you mentioned it's a rewarding industry. Why do we find the most rewarding about what you're doing, or maybe the feedback that you have from your clients?
Great question. I think one of the most rewarding things for me individually is that there's always something new. We have to stay relevant. We have to continue learning. So from a personal perspective, I have to continuously grow and evolve as an individual. And that means that I can then share new ways of doing and being with our clients. And then what that translates to for our clients on the other side is that they get to stay relevant. They're engaged. And I think the most fulfilling thing for me is to watch a room of leaders who might walk in as strangers, or perhaps, they've met on a Zoom call a couple of times, and they don't really know each other within an organization, which is wild to me. But the majority of the people that come together don't actually know each other that well. And they leave with new collaborations, new projects they're launching, new perspective and understanding for the process of somebody else's job and the weight of somebody else's responsibilities. And so that, for me, is the most fulfilling, to see people come into a room as close to strangers and leave as a really solid, connected, and committed team.
Right. And how do you manage to do that? To basically transform strangers into a real tight team?
Yes. I mean, some of them are proprietary secrets, of course. But for the most part, I mean, we operate on trainings on what I call a 33-10 model. So that means that 30% of our session or time together is the sharing of new information or concepts that really sets the stage for what are we working with? What's our objective in this session and in this training? And then the next 30% is discussion. So we let people dive into the content. How do you dissect this? What does this mean for you? How will you actually apply it when you leave this room? Then we look at the third 30%, which is an application of the information, whether that's through case studies or exercises, but we're creating scenarios where they're actually able to take it and make it move from theory to practice. And then the most important piece is the final 10%. And that's where we look at their key takeaways and we solidify, the second you leave this training space, what's your first step? Because a lot of the times when people are in a training, they have all these theories and concepts and they sound great in the space, but then they walk out and they say, I actually have no idea how to apply this. And it can seem overwhelming. So we look at what's that small micro step you can take that starts to apply this and make, these new ways of leading a habit. So I'd say that's one, is the way in which we structure our trainings. And the other is that we take really intentional care in getting to know our cohorts so that all of our facilitators, we can pull out information from individuals knowing their strengths and how their strengths might support another team member's weaknesses. And we curate the groups and the breakout groups based on that. So we're almost creating these very intentional collisions and chances to connect for our participants.
Great, interesting. And so you mentioned, if I'm right, that you're working mostly with mid-level management people within big organizations?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the funny thing is, I know everybody says you need to niche down and kind of find your audience. For us, it's if you have people that need to collaborate in an organization, need us. But I will say that we focus in and around kind of the 200 to 500 employee mark. That means that they have a mid-level leadership band. A lot of the times they're scaling or have just scaled. So there's, the foundation might be solid or it might be a little shaky because they've gone through such growth. And so it's really a great opportunity for us to get organizations in that stage where we say, okay, let's reset and refresh our expectations and get this peer group completely aligned so that senior leaders can go do what they do best. They can share the strategy. Our mid-level leaders can translate that strategy. They can delegate effectively, and the individual contributors can go up and actually perform as best they can, right? With all of the tools they have and they need for success. So that's why we focus on that band and that kind of employee or the organization size, I should say.
And so this is really interesting to me because we have one of our partners actually that is focusing on the same segment, so mid level management. But now he wants to focus more on the CEOs and the C-level management because he wants to detach from this. And this is more personal question I'm interested in. But what is the vision behind this? Why do you specifically focus on this level of management and group trainings, if I understand correctly, rather than one-on-one training with higher ranked people, let's say?
Yes, that's a really great question. And to be honest, at the start of my journey, I thought it would be more of that executive level one-on-one work. And for me, I found that it's great to have the one-on-one coaching, and we also incorporate that within our programs so they get both. But when it's just one-on-one coaching, then you're kind of growing and developing in a silo, and the rest of your team isn't necessarily catching up at the same rate. So part of the reason why we focus on that mid-level group and in a group training is that everybody's using the same vocabulary. They're having the same discussion. They're privy to the same information. But also our mid-level leaders, they have to ride, and somebody said this beautifully to me the other day, the communication elevator. So they have to engage and interact with their executive team. They have to translate strategy. They have to share and support that information to the rest of the organization. And they also have to collaborate with their peers across departments. So they're in what I would say is one of the highest stress positions. And a lot of the time people do focus on, executive coaching and training. And then they focus on how do we train up our individual contributors and run workshops. And so it's these people that actually have such a huge ripple effect in an organization that don't get so much love. And again, like I said, they have the biggest ripple effect because they're touching all parts of a business and all management levels. And so for us as well, we normally are brought in by C-suite or executives. And so we always loop them in and make sure that they're in the know, they know, they understand, and they get a crash course on what we're working on with their mid-level leaders so that there is congruency between those two management levels, because it does trickle down at the end of the day. But these mid-level leaders are also going to be the senior leader successors. So we want to focus on the new generation of leaders as well.
Well, do you know this book named Good to Great? It's about leadership. Yeah. Did you read it?
Great book. I did. Yeah. Years ago. It's a very good one. Yeah. Is it one of your favorites?
I read it recently with my team actually, because as I mentioned, we are currently building up our own team, and it's interesting to me to ask this because from your experience, what do you say is the biggest challenge when you want to build a team, and when you mention again that you take lots of people from the same team, but they don't know each other, they have sometimes, I guess, almost nothing in common. And what is the main challenge you have to put them together and create a real team, actually?
Yes. Ooh, that is a very good question. A couple of things. One, I would say, is seeing each other as humans and not just, this person from sales or this person from HR. Actually getting to know them, and when we create connection, there's more empathy, there's more tolerance, there's more patience. So bringing that human element into the conversation, I think, is a huge piece. And the other is getting aligned on expectations. And the thing we notice a lot with our trainings, because we talk about how to provide effective feedback and how to delegate, and all those things are fine and good. But unless you have expectations and clarity of expectations that let you know what you're actually course correcting to and what you're providing feedback on to be able to meet expectations, then everybody's just kind of operating on their own and there isn't cohesion, right? Everybody's just kind of doing their own thing, which, as we know, doesn't build a cohesive team. A team means everybody's looking in the same direction, striving for the same goals. But when we don't have that clarity of expectations, and to be honest, with a lot of the leaders we see, they live up here and they say they've communicated them, but there hasn't truly been a communication of these expectations, or not in an effective way. That's the biggest piece and the biggest aha moment for a lot of our team members, where they say, okay, now we have clarity of vision. Now we've broken down, here are the steps you need to take in order to achieve this vision. And here's how each department and each individual contributes to that vision. And they leave and everybody's just aligned.
Yeah, interesting. So, yeah, communication. Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
Big time.
Communication. Yeah. Communication is key. And people say, it's good to over communicate, but I would disagree. I think over communicating can also, it can bring too much noise and confusion. You need to effectively communicate at the end of the day.
Is this the main thing that you try to teach to these managers, communicating effectively? Yeah,
it is. Yeah. So we focus on obviously connection. I've talked about a lot, communication and communicating effectively. So whether that's the channels we use, whether that's the way in which we're communicating and who we're communicating to, we really make that kind of the tools that we use are all communication based. And then that in turn drives commitment, and commitment could be to the organization. It could be accountability. It could be just personal and professional growth. But yeah, that communication piece is really where we see teams start to come together and leave stronger.
Okay, so would you say that being a great communicator is the main trait of being a great leader?
Very good question. I would say so, yes. I think being a great communicator, but beyond being a great communicator, I would say that starts with being a great listener and a great observer. So, that high emotional intelligence, being able to read a room, being able to listen intentionally, and then take the information, formulate it, and communicate it in a way that lands with the audience. That's where being a great communicator makes you a great leader. But it all has to start with the input of information that we take and how you do that. And then the communication is secondary to that.
Yeah. Well, and would you have some tips for the people listening to this, how to listen in a great manner and to communicate greatly? Few actionable tips to become a great leader, actually.
Yes, yeah. So to listen intently, I would say, first of all, clear your distractions. We have a million pings and dings and things that are going off, but if you actually want to give somebody your attention, flip your phone over, better put it away, silence your notifications for the 10, 15, 30 minutes you're speaking with your team. And that does wonders, not just obviously for your own focus, but also for the respect that that other person feels. And clear your mind of thoughts. Listen to hear what that person is actually saying and remove assumption from that. So some of the best leaders that I know, they might hear something and they could make an assumption about it because we all have our own perspectives and views of the world. But then they ask really good clarifying questions to make sure that they're on the same page as the person talking. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the times they're not, and that just brings the clarity. And then the next step is, how are they then reacting to that conversation or communicating back, and making sure that that's aligned with what you've heard. So that's my first tip, is just, if you're not sure, or if you feel like you're making an assumption, ask questions for clarity, and people appreciate that. And then when it comes to communicating, I think the one tip I have for people is be specific. A lot of the time we hear leaders say, we need to be better next year, or we need more clients, or, they use very ambiguous or vague terms. And what we need to say is give people something to measure against. Mm-hmm. Be specific. What does better look like for you? What does more look like for you? And that allows your team to have a goal in mind and to say, okay, otherwise, if I'm saying be better, we need more, then 1 is more, 2 is more, right? So everybody has a different idea of what success looks like. So you really need to be specific to define that. And again, make sure everybody's aligned and on the same page.
And so, I'm a strong believer in all of this leadership skill, mindset. I think that you can build a business or even a great team without having the foundations with this. So naturally, we invest a lot in mentorship, in all kind of knowledge, basically. And one thing that one of our mentors told us was that sometimes we are too much in our own heads, and it prevented us from communicating in a great manner. Is it something that you see with the managers and directors that you're training?
That's great advice. And I love that you invest in that mentorship too. I think you're doing all the right things. So that's really great. And yeah, we overthink things, right? Sometimes we let our emotions take the wheel, and especially for first-time leaders or first-time managers, you're thinking about, am I saying the right things? Am I approaching this person in the right way? If I say this, then what will they do? And there's a lot of emotion attached to that. And as we know, our emotions can kind of commandeer our physical bodies and the way in which we think too. So I think if you have a really good framework to be able to provide feedback, or if you have a really good framework to have a conversation, or you can remember that you're thinking about specifics when you're providing information, that removes some of the personal element of it, the emotions that are associated with it, because you're measuring against something that's objective. It's a number that we've all agreed on and we've all set. So now it's not about, I'm telling you this and this is my opinion and I'm talking about your character, which gets people spinning in their heads and overthinking. But no, this is something that, we've all set, we're all striving for. It's a goal that we're looking to attain together. So it removes some of that stress and some of that overthinking. When you are able to have, solid numbers or processes or, things that everybody can kind of come back to as what we all know to be true and what we're all aligned on. And yeah, so I think that's really, it's easy to say, get out of your head and your overthinking, but it requires action and it requires practice to do that.
Well, how did you learn all this? Do you have your own mentors? I guess so.
Yes, definitely. I would love to say I was born with all of this, but that's not realistic. Of course, trial and error has been one of my best teachers over the course of my career, but I have had very strong mentors, and still to this day, who I go to because I know that they don't sugarcoat anything. And they also understand how to deliver information to me. They know me, they know the way in which I operate, and almost some of them know the way I think better than I do, to be honest. And so I have different mentors, different things, and that could be some personal, some professional, some in very specific professional areas. But knowing that you have that support system and people who are providing you with feedback in order to help you be your best it's invaluable. And so I would say, we're all kind of a patchwork of the people we meet. And for me, these skills, this business is a patchwork of everybody that I've crossed paths with over my career.
Well, and were you introduced to this business and the whole leadership industry via a mentor? Because we are talking to lots of people that were doing completely different things, and they had a meeting one day, and they got introduced to the leadership industry. Is it your case?
Yeah, you asked really great questions. No, it actually wasn't. I kind of stumbled into it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I stumbled into it. I was introduced, I would say, to personal and professional development from my mother years and years ago. She's always been in the industry. I would help her run workshops, and this was more on the personal side of things. And so I was in project management and event planning prior to starting the business. Burnt myself out completely and realized that that's not sustainable. That's not something I want to do. And, nobody should have to go through this, especially mid-level leaders. So as you can see, it was kind of the start of not my villain story, but the success story. And then I remember I was living in Norway and I moved home and I said, I'm just going to try and run workshops. I have a program that I've been researching and developing. I have a proprietary assessment that I've been working on over the past 6 years at that point. So let's see if this has legs. And at that point, I had done some research on the industry, but it wasn't what it is now, let's say, especially soft skills. Nobody really talked about those. And so in taking a chance on it stuck. And it's just really great to see that more and more people are being exposed to the industry now and want to be involved, because I think that everybody brings kind of their own flavor and their own approach. So you'll always be able to find something that resonates with you, which is really cool in this space.
Right. And you mentioned that, so it's been 7 years and you saw the industry changed a lot. Yes. What were the main changes? How did you see the industry change?
Yes, I think a lot more people are prioritizing training and development, and they're, allocating resources, and resources could be budget, more so time, and they're prioritizing their team's time to go through training and development. I think previously, a lot of people were focusing on the technical trainings, so certifications and making sure that their team had technical knowledge. And then now people are starting to realize that, oh, well, they've been promoted based on their technical merit, but we've actually lost 5 people under this person's management. And while they're technically brilliant, they can't manage people and our people are leaving. And that's very costly. So we're seeing a shift in a lot more of those soft skills coming to the forefront. So whether that's communication training, presentation training, emotional intelligence. I know that there's even civility training. So how do you operate with civility in an organization? And people are understanding that is really the glue that drives any kind of successful business and allows us to interact better with our clients and really grow our organization. So I've really seen a shift away from a lot of the technical training. Obviously, we still have that, and I don't devalue that because I think it is equally as important. But a lot of people are also focusing on, okay, how do we make our people better as people rather than just as, technical or knowledge experts, let's call it.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think the main shift, the main cause of the shift? Do you think it's just because some companies or many companies saw that they were promoting people that didn't have the right skill? So do you think it's something other?
I think that's a big part of it, to be honest. I really do think that people started to look at the numbers and say, okay, attrition is quite expensive.
Mm.
And so how are we keeping our people, and it's the cause of everybody wanting to leave? And obviously, you know, the common denominator would be poor management or poor leadership. As we know, that's, you know, you can search on LinkedIn and you'll find at least 5 posts that say it's the number one reason people leave. And I would also say there's been a big kind of societal shift. You know, whether that's work from home, work from anywhere, global, you know, we're now connected globally, and that doesn't just require walking into an office and chatting with the person next to you, but that means that you have to expand past cultures and languages and time zones. And so that requires a lot more of that emotional intelligence and an ability to connect and communicate with people who are very different than you, have different value systems. But again, everybody needs to be aligned towards an organization's objectives. So I think just in the way that we work now has changed. We have 4 generations in organizations right now, which we've never had before. And so that really brings about a lot of learning and unlearning. And again, like I said, different value systems, different beliefs about what work should look like. And so everybody's kind of trying to find common ground and compromise, if you will. And that requires, again, a lot of those more sensitive conversations. So I think that's been a huge shift in the industry.
And do you see the difference between, let's say you have 2 teams, 2 different teams that you are coaching. One is working in an office like before, and one is working only remotely. Do you see a difference in the cohesion or anything?
Ooh, that's a controversial question right there. Yes, I do see a difference. I think that, you know, from what I see, and again, there are other variables at play, so I will put that caveat out there that it also does depend on how the organization works remotely and how they work in person. But what I have found is when people are able to come together face to face, maybe it doesn't need to be every day, but more frequently, they do get to know people better, because there are those opportunities for, you know, the quick conversation. There's at least familiarity. Whereas some of the virtual teams we've worked with, you know, they get on a call and half of them have only seen names from emails. They've never actually seen what the other person looks like. Now, I don't think that it's a bad thing, and I don't think that fully virtual teams shouldn't be as connected, but I think it just requires carving out more time and more intentional time to have people come together and get to know one another. And again, that can be in the virtual space, but just that opportunity to connect and to meet. And so that's where we really see the difference, is like the in-person happens more organically, whereas virtual needs to be kind of more contrived in order to make that happen.
Yeah, so this obviously was a big shift in the world, in the corporate world. How do you see the industry evolve in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, it's going to be interesting, obviously, with AI coming into play and all these technologies that we have. And from my perspective, and maybe optimistically, and maybe I'm on something here, but I think that AI will be, yes, at the forefront of how we work and how we engage and how we learn. But at the end of the day, I still think we need that human connection, because that's baked into our biology. And so I think that we will have more trainings, more cohort-based, let's call them trainings, rather than just the e-learnings, because I think that there's so much out there, so much information. I mean, we can get anything at our fingertips. And so the e-learning courses, people aren't fully kind of maybe not taking seriously, or they're not completing all the way through, whereas there's accountability with more of those cohort-based, discussion-based trainings. So I see a lot more of those, so that people will complete them. They come together. It's, again, that intentional time for them to meet. And I see, obviously, a lot more of that software, technology, AI training, prompting, which at the end of the day is still a form of communication training, because you have to say the right things, you have to send the right message, you have to ask the right questions. So I don't see any kind of communication or soft skill training going anywhere. I think it's going to be more needed as AI continues to evolve, because as an organization, you want to differentiate yourself. You don't want, all of the thriving and rocket ship emoji all over all of your branding that, everybody else has.
Okay, so you basically see AI as an opportunity to grow and develop skills rather than a threat.
Yes, yeah. And I know I might be unique in that thinking. I think that people kind of are in two camps. We're either going to end up like iRobot, or AI will crash and everybody's going to be fine. And I think at the end of the day, the tools that we have available to us are only as effective as the people that use them. So again, that comes down to critical thinking and discernment and, doing your due diligence, because AI is going to continue to evolve and it will get smarter, but we can't always believe everything that's shared with us. So how do we as humans then fact check? How do we prompt? I think that it's going to be a very useful tool, and it will allow people to kind of use it for some of those mundane tasks, but then let their creativity show through. So I hope it brings about more innovation for us and creative ideas that haven't been thought of before.
Yeah, optimistic. I love it.
We try.
Thanks a lot, Kendra. It was a really great conversation. Before ending the podcast, if someone is listening to you and want to contact you, how can they do?
Yes, a couple of places. I would say LinkedIn is probably the best. Mm-hmm. So on there's Kendra Johnson. You'll see the Venned Group, and that's me. Otherwise, you can reach out from thevenndgroup.com, and that's VENMED group.com, or Kendra@vennedgroup.com as well via email. So I would say those are the best places to get in contact.
Great, perfect. Thanks a lot, Kendra.
Thank you so much. As did I. It was great. Thank you.
Bye.